Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, April the 27th. And welcome to our commentary. I guess this is our last Sunday in April, 2024. So we're getting closer. We're getting closer to that very interesting moment when President Trump is going to have to make an announcement on who the vice president is. I still think my gut feeling tells me that he's going to probably hold this out a little bit, maybe more into right after Memorial Day. I think strategically that would be good for him to have a vice presidential candidate out there this summer. But, there's all kinds of speculation. Your guess is as good as mine. There was a private meeting, they say, between President Trump and Governor DeSantis. Well, what was that all about? I don't know. I guess they were just talking, maybe getting to know each other. DeSantis wants to know how he can help. Maybe that's the objective. I have no idea why they met, but that would be a heck of a ticket. If that was the ticket, Trump DeSantis, that would be a very good ticket, I think, going into the election. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Well, I have a post that came out Saturday morning talking about what is happening with the American economy right now. The GDP is down. The latest report, the GDP is trending down, and the inflation is trending up. And that, of course, was the reason why the economists were so surprised that these things happened on Friday. Friday's report was unexpected, as they like to say. But really, how can it be unexpected? I mean, anybody living in this economy day in and day out knows that things are not going well. Now, you can talk about all the employment figures, you can talk about all of that. And it is true that, there is a good, historically speaking, the unemployment rate is good. But then when you get into the numbers, as they like to say, that's when you get into all the problems. The number of people, for example, I just saw a story today that the number of businesses who are having difficulty making their rent, their monthly rent is going up. The number of Americans who cannot pay their car loans is going up. So these are the signs, of trouble. Yes, the unemployment rate is low, and that's good. If you're working, that's good. But there's lots and lots of other problems. Inflation, number one, I think in the minds of most people. I mean, when you're paying $3.45, at least here in the Dallas, Texas area, when you're paying $3.35, $3.40, $3.45 for a gallon of gasoline, that's going to take its toll on the family budget. And that's the reason why President Biden is not getting any credit for the economy. It kind of leads me to my second point. I have a post over at the American Thinker today, Sunday, talking about what we're seeing in this campaign. Trump is going up, and more Americans are saying, you know what? His presidency was successful. The Biden presidency is not successful. Now, this is now the result of three different polls. I'm one of those people who's very skeptical when a poll comes out, because a poll can say whatever you want it to say. When you have three of them, New York Times, CNN, and there was another one whose name I don't remember right now, but three of them basically saying the same thing, that Americans are now looking at the Trump presidency and saying that was successful, and they're looking at this presidency and they're saying it's a failure. And again, why would they think anything else? I mean, just think about it. Just think about it. You've got the inflation that I just spoke about. You've got the energy situation, which is a disaster. I mean, instead of producing more energy and unleashing the incredible energy potential that we have here in the United States, all the different kinds of energy, not just fossil fuels. I'm a believer in everything. I want everything to be developed. But fossil fuels is the one where we can do the most good in the short term. Well, they're holding back. They're cutting back production here. They're cutting back exploration over here. And that, of course, makes energy more expensive. Now, what's interesting is they're not telling the Venezuelans, they're not telling Saudi Arabia, they're not telling anybody to cut back on oil production because of climate change. We're only doing that in the United States, which is pretty stupid to me. It sounds like we're surrendering. Look, we have all the oil in the world right here. Okay. And again, let me repeat, so I don't get emails from people saying that I don't, that I don't believe in other forms of energy. I believe in every form of energy that you can come up with. But fossil fuels and nuclear power are two that I think have the quickest advantage to the American economy. And speaking of that, we spoke with Leslie Eastman on Friday. We did a video with her. You may want to check this out. It's in the archives, because Leslie has been writing a great deal about, nuclear power and fossil fuels, and writing some very sensible and practical ideas about how to make your energy cheaper, whether it's your gasoline, whether it's your electricity. All of these things are a big deal with the inflation. So this administration is just not succeeding in any of those areas. Now, when you add to all of this, and I wrote about this in my American Thinker post, when you add to all of this the situation with these stupid trials, particularly the ones in New York, I mean, just an absolute disaster. I saw, Alan Dershowitz, who is a very, very liberal Democrat. Okay, you cannot accuse Alan Dershowitz of being a Trump Republican, because he's not. He'll tell you, I don't want to vote for Trump, but he's an honest shooter. And he's saying that this trial in New York is a trial looking for a crime. What crime did he commit? What did he do wrong? Why are we going through all of this? So anyway, I think a lot of Americans are looking at this trial or these trials and saying, you know what? How convenient. Everything in an election year, everything in these districts, super Democrat districts, where they're hoping for a quick conviction so they can say, we convicted him of something. How convenient. And I think a lot of Americans are looking at this and saying, you know what? We don't like this kind of politics. If you don't like Trump, run against him. If you don't like Trump, vote against him. But don't use the judicial system to turn the United States into a banana republic where we go after the politicians of the other party. We don't do that here. We don't do that here. And I think a lot of Americans are saying, don't do it. You don't like Trump? Great. Vote against him. Run against him. Do whatever you want. Vote against him. But don't try to use the legal system to destroy the other party. Because I think Americans are smart enough to know that once you get into this, political vengeance, once you go into this cave, as I call it, the cave of political vengeance, once you get in there, you don't know what's in there. You don't know what's in there. And both parties are going to have a lot of surprises once you start playing this game of political vengeance, because who knows? They may go after a Democrat. They may go after a future Democrat, or maybe one of the former Democrats like Clinton and Obama or whatever. So it's just a bad idea. It's a line that should have never been crossed. And I think a lot of Americans are sending the Democrats a message, and they're saying, hey, don't do this. Just run on ideas, run on your ideas, run against Trump on his record or your record, and leave all this political vengeance out of it. It's not good for the country, and it isn't good for the country. I mean, the country's bitterly divided because of all of this, and we could do a lot better. We could do a lot better. Believe me, we could. I know this because I've seen this country at better times, and we can be a much better country when we don't have this bickering and bitterness between the political parties. I have a post coming up Monday morning about NPR. You may have heard that NPR had a few problems. One of their editors came out and wrote a very critical piece of the network, basically saying that, they've lost the trust of the American people because they're nothing but a mouthpiece for the woke and for the very liberal. He talked about how the coverage at NPR is obsessed with race, identity politics, and all this kind of stuff. And he thinks that NPR is losing the trust of the American people. Not only are they losing the trust of the American people, but they're losing audiences, which is more important from a business standpoint. So anyway, my post is about one of the problems that NPR has, and that is that they're not getting minorities to listen to NPR. It's still the same old NPR, meaning white liberals listening to NPR, particularly a lot of college professors, just a lot of white liberals who love NPR. The problem is they want to get more diverse. They want to appeal to Hispanics and to African Americans, but they're not having any success. And as I write in my post that you'll get a chance to see tomorrow, the reason they're not having any success is because they're not addressing, or they're not speaking to Hispanics and African Americans about the issues that affect those societies. They're not talking, for example, about the economy. They're not talking about the black on black crime, which is devastating many of the inner cities. They're just talking about liberal things, like race and identity politics and climate change. Nice topics. I'm not saying they're not, but that's not what Hispanics and African Americans are talking about. They're talking about issues in their communities, and climate change is not one of them. And so that's the problem at NPR. They need to. I mean, they need to do a sweep. I mean, they basically need to turn that organization upside down and do like a total makeover and just redo the organization. I mean, they have the same problem as CNN. You know, CNN today is having a very difficult time getting an audience. Why? Because their brand really stinks. The image of CNN really stinks. And everybody knows what you're going to get if you watch CNN. Nothing but attacks on Trump. Well, attacking Trump may have been very popular 3 or 4 years ago. But attacking Trump today, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, attacking Trump today, when most Americans think that his presidency was a success, is not a good strategy if you want to build an audience. Again, most Americans, again, based on these polls, they're saying that the Trump presidency was a success compared to Joe Biden. Well, it's kind of hard to play all this anti-Trump stuff when Americans actually look back and say, you know, he did a pretty decent job. So it's kind of tough to be the anti-Trump network when more and more Americans are now buying what you're selling. By the way, I saw a story. Let me just briefly mention this. I saw a story in the last hour or so that more colleges are shutting down, or at least going online, because of all these problems. A couple of colleges in California, USC, one of the great colleges of the country, shut down the graduation ceremony. What a joke is that? I mean, that's horrible. Think of these students have invested all their time and effort to graduate and have their families there. They're shutting it down because of these demonstration. It really makes you wonder who's winning this. If you're shutting down schools and going online, well, the people winning are the demonstrators, not the students, or the professors who are doing their jobs, or the administrators. No, the people winning are the demonstrators who have basically shut down these schools. So it's time, it's time to try a little bit of what we did here in Texas last week, when the students at the University of Texas who wanted to demonstrate got a feeling of what it's like when the governor says, no, we're not going to play that game. You know, you're not going to do here what you did in Colombia. And they put a show of force, pretty significant show of force on the ground. And a bunch of people were arrested. And we didn't have in Texas what we're seeing in Colombia and some of these other universities. A pretty good lesson, I think, from the state of Texas on how to deal with these demonstrators. Well, today, on this day in history, let me leave you with a quick one. Happy number 83 to Anne Margaret. Now, maybe the younger people don't know who she is, but she was an absolutely beautiful actress who played in a bunch of movies. The two that come to my mind are Bye Bye Birdie, that she made as a very young woman. And then she was with Elvis Presley on the movie Viva Las Vegas, and they made a great pair together, by the way. It may have been the best Elvis actress combination ever. But that was a great movie, and they made a great couple. But of course, she did a bunch of other things too. I mean, just an absolutely beautiful woman who turned 83 today. So we say happy birthday to the very beautiful Anne Margaret. I mean, wow. Time flies. That's all I can tell you. That's all I can tell you. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. I hope you had a good weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.